He had the power to burn the city to the ground with a single phone call. Dominic Calvetti wasn't just a mob boss. He was a ghost, a man who had buried his heart 10 years ago, along with his family. But on a rainy Tuesday night, inside a dimly lit jazz club, the barrel of a gun was lowered for the first time in a decade. It wasn't the police or a rival gang that stopped him. It was a waitress. Just one look at her, shaking, terrified, holding a tray of shattered glass, and the most dangerous man in New York called off the war. Why? Because dead women aren't supposed to walk into jazz clubs. And Dominic was looking at a ghost. The Onyx Lounge on 42nd Street wasn't a place for happy hours. It was a place where the air was always thick with expensive cigar smoke, the scent of aged scotch, and the heavy metallic taste of fear. It was 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. The rain was hammering against the darkened windows, a relentless New York downpour that drowned out the sirens wailing 3 blocks over. Inside, the mood was even stormier. Dominic "Dom" Calvetti sat in the corner booth, the one with the high leather back that faced the door. At 36, Dom looked like a man carved out of granite and regret. He wore a bespoke suit, charcoal grey, tailored to hide the Sig Sauer P226 holstered under his left arm. He didn't touch the amber liquid in the crystal glass before him. He was watching the table across the room. Sitting there were 3 men. Russians, the Petrov brothers. Oleg Petrov, the eldest, was laughing too loudly, his gold tooth flashing under the low amber lights. He was celebrating a deal that hadn't happened yet. He didn't know that in approximately 3 minutes he wasn't going to walk out of the Onyx Lounge. "Boss," a voice rumbled beside Dom. It was Salvatore "Sal" Rizzo, Dom's right hand, a man the size of a vending machine with a heart 2 sizes too small. "The kitchen exit is secured. Mikey and the boys are in position. On your signal." Dom stared at Oleg. The Russian had encroached on the shipping lanes in Jersey. He had sold product to kids in Dom's neighborhoods. That was the line. Tonight was the correction. "Wait for the piano player to finish the set," Dom said, his voice a low gravel that barely rose above the hum of the room. "I want it clean. No civilians." "Place is nearly empty, Dom." "Just the staff," Sal muttered, checking his watch. Dom scanned the room. The bartender, an old-timer named Artie, who knew to duck when voices got raised, was polishing a glass. A couple of stragglers near the stage were leaving. And then the kitchen door swung open. A waitress stepped out. She wasn't supposed to be there. The floor manager had been paid $5,000 to clear the floor by 11:30. Dom's eyes narrowed. She was struggling with a heavy tray of empty champagne flutes. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was a size too big, the black fabric hanging loosely off her slender frame. Her hair, a dark, messy chestnut, was pulled back in a fraying clip, strands falling into her face. She looked like a million other girls trying to survive the city, tired, overworked, invisible. But as she moved past the Petrov table, Oleg reached out. It was a drunk, clumsy grab. Oleg's meaty hand caught her wrist. "Hey, Krasavitsa, where you going? We need more vodka." The tray wobbled. The girl gasped, trying to pull away. "Sir, please let go. You have to sit with us," Oleg sneered, pulling her harder. The tray tipped. Crash! The sound of shattering crystal cut through the jazz piano like a gunshot. The music stopped abruptly. The room went dead silent. Oleg stood up, his face red with rage, brushing glass shards off his expensive suit. He raised a hand as if to strike her. The girl flinched, curling in on herself, raising her arms to protect her face. In that split second, the dim light from the stage hit her face perfectly. Dom froze. The air left his lungs as if he'd been punched in the gut. He saw the fear in her eyes. Not generic fear. A specific, terrified wideness. But it wasn't just the fear. It was the eyes themselves. Heterochromia. One eye a deep, soulful brown, the other a fractured, icy blue. And the scar, a tiny, crescent-shaped white line just above her right eyebrow. Dom's hand, which had been resting on the table, clenched so hard the wood groaned. The world tilted on its axis. The noise of the club, the Russians, the rain, it all vanished. All he could see was that face. "It's not possible," his mind screamed. "I buried her. I saw the casket go into the ground." Oleg's hand was descending. Dom didn't signal the hit. He didn't nod to Sal. He moved. He was out of the booth before Sal could blink. He crossed the floor with the speed of a predator, covering the distance in 3 long strides. Just as Oleg's hand was inches from the girl's face, Dom caught his wrist. He didn't just catch it. He crushed it. Oleg howled, his knees buckling under the pressure of Dom's grip. "Calvetti, what the—" "Touch her," Dom whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm. "And I will peel the skin from your bones right here." The violence in his tone was absolute. The 2 other Russians jumped up, hands reaching for their jackets. Instantly, the sound of ratchets clicking filled the room. Sal and 4 other men emerged from the shadows, Glocks raised and aimed at the Russians' heads. It was a standoff, a bloodbath waiting to happen. But Dom wasn't looking at the Russians. He was looking at the waitress. She was trembling, pressed against the wall, staring up at him. She didn't look at him like a savior. She looked at him like he was the devil himself. She was hyperventilating, her chest heaving. "Look at me," Dom commanded, ignoring the guns pointed at his back. She shook her head, tears spilling over. "Please, I didn't mean to drop it. I'll pay for it. Please don't hurt me." "The scar," Dom demanded, reaching out. His hand, usually steady as stone, shook slightly. He brushed the hair away from her forehead. She flinched violently, squeezing her eyes shut. "Don't—" There it was, the crescent scar. Dom felt a cold sweat break out on his neck. Memories he had suppressed for 10 years came flooding back. The fire at the lake house, the smell of gasoline, the screams, the police report stating that Sofia Calvetti, his younger sister, had died in the blaze along with their parents. They said the bodies were burned beyond recognition, identified only by dental records. Records that Dom had always suspected could be faked, but never dared to hope were. But this girl, she looked exactly like Sofia would have looked at 22. The eyes. The scar she got when she fell off her bike when she was 6. "Boss!" Sal's voice was urgent, edged with panic. "Boss, the Petrovs are getting twitchy. We take them now, or we back off. What's the call?" Oleg was sweating, sensing that the dynamic had shifted from a business hit to something personal and volatile. "Calvetti, you break the truce for a waitress? You're crazy." Dom didn't take his eyes off the girl. Her name tag, pinned crookedly to her apron, read, "Clara, Clara, not Sofia." "Everyone out," Dom said. The silence stretched. "What?" Sal asked, confused. "I said everyone out," Dom roared, turning to face the room, his eyes wild. "The hit is off. Petrov, get your men and get the hell out of my city before I change my mind." Oleg didn't need to be told twice. He saw the insanity in Dom's eyes and knew he had been granted a miracle. He motioned to his men, and they scrambled toward the exit, knocking over chairs in their haste. "Boss, what are you doing?" Sal hissed, stepping closer. "We had them. This was months of planning. Clear the room, Sal, now." Sal looked at Dom, saw the vein throbbing in his temple, and nodded slowly. He holstered his weapon. "All right, boys, wrap it up. We're done here." The crew filtered out, casting confused glances at their boss and the trembling waitress. The bartender, Artie, disappeared into the back office, locking the door behind him. Finally, it was just the 2 of them, the Mafia Don and the waitress amidst the shattered glass. Dom took a step back, giving her space. He adjusted his suit jacket, trying to regain his composure, trying to bury the ghost that had just risen from the grave. "Stand up, Clara," he said softly. She used the wall to support herself, her legs shaky. She looked down at the broken glass. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up." "Leave the glass," Dom said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a money clip. He peeled off a stack of $100 bills, easily $2,000, and placed it on the nearest table. "Go home." Clara looked at the money, then at him. Confusion warred with fear in her mismatched eyes. I can't take that. My manager, he'll fire me if I leave before the shift is—" "You don't work here anymore," Dom stated. It wasn't a suggestion. "This place isn't safe for you." "I need this job," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. I have to pay." She stopped herself. Dom studied her. She was hiding something, not just her identity, but a burden. He could see the weight of it in her shoulders. "What do you have to pay, Clara?" She clamped her mouth shut, looking away. "Nothing. Thank you for helping me." She skirted around the table, avoiding the money, and made a dash for the kitchen door. "Wait," Dom called out. She paused, hand on the doorframe, but didn't turn around. "Who are you?" he asked. "Really?" She hesitated for a heartbeat. "Just a waitress, Mr. Calvetti." Then she was gone. Dom stood alone in the silence of the Onyx lounge. He walked over to where she had been standing. He crouched down and picked up a shard of the broken champagne flute. A drop of blood was on the floor. She must have cut herself when she fell. He touched the blood with his fingertip, rubbing it against his thumb. He pulled his phone out. He dialed a number that only 2 people in the world had. "Yeah?" a voice answered on the second ring. It was Anthony the Ghost DeLuca, a private investigator who used to work for the CIA before he realized the pay was better in the private sector. "I need a background check," Dom said, his voice hard. "Full workup, deep dive. I want to know where she was born, who her parents are, dental records, medical history, everything." "Name?" "She goes by Clara, works at the Onyx Lounge. But Tony—" Dom paused, looking at the empty kitchen door. "Run her DNA against the familial database, specifically the Calvetti file." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Dom, you know that file is closed. Sophia is dead." "Just do it," Dom snapped. "And Tony, put a tail on her. I want to know where she goes, who she speaks to, and what she's afraid of. She's in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Dom looked at the shattered glass. "The kind that almost got her killed tonight. And if she is who I think she is, the whole city is going to burn for it." He hung up the phone. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. Dom walked out of the club, leaving the stack of cash on the table. He didn't know it yet, but calling off the hit on the Petrovs was the easy part. Clara wasn't just a waitress, and the secrets she was keeping were far more dangerous than any Russian mobster. Clara didn't stop running until she hit the subway entrance at Times Square. Her lungs were burning, not just from the exertion, but from the panic constricting her chest. She fumbled with her Metro card, her hands shaking so violently she dropped it twice before finally swiping through the turnstile. She collapsed onto a plastic seat in the back of the N train, pulling her knees up to her chest, ignoring the side-eyed glances from a group of teenagers. He saw me, she thought, a fresh wave of nausea rolling over her. Dominic Calvetti saw me. For 10 years she had been a ghost. She had buried Sophia Calvetti in the ashes of that lake house. She had become Clara, a nobody, a face in the crowd, a woman without a past. She had dyed her hair, worn coloured contacts, until the money ran out and she had to rely on thick glasses to hide her eyes, and moved from Chicago to Philly to New York, always staying one step ahead of the shadows. But tonight, the contacts had been irritating her eyes, and she'd left her glasses in her locker. One slip, one broken tray of champagne. And the monster who had destroyed her life had looked right into her soul. The train rattled into Queens. Clara closed her eyes, and the nightmare came back, as vivid as yesterday. The smell of gasoline, the sound of the front door being barred from the outside, her father's screams, and through the window, illuminated by the flames, she had seen him, her brother, Dominic, standing by the black SUV watching the house burn. He hadn't tried to help. He had just watched, or so she had believed for a decade. The memory was fragmented, warped by smoke and trauma, but the fear was real. She had crawled out through the basement coal chute, burned and choking, and run into the woods. She had been found by a trucker, a kind man named Elias who didn't ask questions, and she had never looked back. She knew that if Dom knew she was alive, he would finish the job. He wanted the inheritance, the empire, all to himself. That was the narrative she had constructed to survive. The train screeched to a halt at Ditmars Boulevard. Clara bolted off, walking fast toward a crumbling brick walk-up 3 blocks away. She unlocked the door to apartment 4B. It was a tiny, stifling box of a room that smelled of boiled cabbage and mold. "Mummy?" a sleepy voice called from the sofa bed. Clara's heart softened. She dropped her bag and rushed over. "I'm here, Leo. Go back to sleep." Leo wasn't her son. He was 6 years old, the son of her neighbor, Maria, who had died of an overdose 2 years ago. Clara had taken him in rather than let him go into the system. He was the reason she worked 3 jobs. He was the reason she couldn't just leave town tonight, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Leo had severe asthma, and without his nebulizer and the expensive meds she bought off the books from a pharmacist in the Bronx, he wouldn't last a week. "Did you get the money?" Leo asked, rubbing his eyes. "For the doctor." Clara felt the weight of her empty pockets. She had left the $2,000 on the table at the Onyx Lounge. She had been too terrified to touch blood money. "I'll get it tomorrow, sweetie," she lied, kissing his forehead. "Don't worry." She went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. She looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The scar above her eye stood out, white against her pale skin. She couldn't go back to the Onyx. Dom would be looking for her. But she needed money. Fast, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped, nearly knocking over the toothbrush holder. It was an unknown number. She shouldn't answer. She really shouldn't. She pressed talk. "Hello?" "You left your money," a deep, gravelly voice said. Clara stopped breathing. It was him. "How did you get this number?" she whispered, backing into the shower stall as if the phone could bite her. "I own the phone company, Clara, or at least the subsidiary that manages the prepaid burners you buy at the corner store." Dom's voice was calm, terrifyingly so. "I'm outside." Clara dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile. She scrambled out of the bathroom, grabbing Leo. "Baby, wake up! We have to go, now!" "Clara, what's wrong?" Leo whined, dead weight in her arms. "Fire drill!" she gasped, grabbing her coat and shoving his feet into sneakers. She threw the door open and screamed. Blocking the hallway wasn't Dominic. It was 2 men she had never seen before. They wore cheap leather jackets and smelled of stale cigarettes. Russians. One of them smiled, revealing a gold tooth. It was the man from the club, Oleg. "Going somewhere, Krasavitsa," Oleg sneered. "Dom Calvetti let me go tonight because of you. I want to know why." Clara tried to slam the door, but Oleg's boot caught it. He shoved his way in, backhanding her across the face. Clara flew backward, hitting the floor hard. "Leave her alone!" Leo screamed, throwing a toy car at the giant man. Oleg laughed and kicked the toy away. He grabbed Clara by the hair, dragging her to her feet. "You are going to tell me everything, and then we are going to call your boyfriend Dominic and invite him to a party." Dominic Calvetti sat in the back of his armored Cadillac Escalade, parked across the street from the tenement building in Queens. The rain had started again, blurring the streetlights into streaks of neon. "Tony, tell me you have something," Dom said into his earpiece. "I got the file, Dom," Tony DeLuca's voice crackled, "and you're not gonna like it. The girl, Clara, she doesn't exist. No birth certificate, no social security number issued before 2016. Her prints aren't in the criminal database, but here's the kicker. I ran facial rec on the DMV database against old family photos." Dom held his breath. "It's a 98% match for Sophia," Tony said softly. "Dom, she's alive." Dom closed his eyes, a mixture of relief and agonizing guilt washing over him. She was alive. All these years he had tortured himself, thinking he had failed to protect her. But relief was quickly replaced by confusion. If she survived, why didn't she come to me? Why is she living in squalor in Queens? There's more, Tony continued. I hacked the encrypted files of the Petrov organization. Oleg didn't leave the city like you told him. He's been tracking her, too. He thinks she's your mistress. He wants leverage. Dom's eyes snapped open. He looked out the window at the apartment building. He saw a shadow move across the window of the 4th floor. Sal, Dom barked. Sal, who was in the driver's seat, whipped his head around. Yeah, boss. The Petrovs are in there. Move in, now. Dom didn't wait for Sal to park. He threw the door open while the car was still rolling. He drew his Sig Sauer and sprinted across the wet pavement, splashing through puddles. Sal and 2 other enforcers scrambled out behind him, racking the slides of their weapons. They hit the front door of the building. It was locked. Dom didn't bother picking it. He fired 2 rounds into the lock mechanism and kicked the door in. They raced up the stairs, the smell of urine and old cooking oil heavy in the stairwell. When they reached the 4th floor, Dom heard a scream, a child's scream. Everything went red. He didn't announce himself. He didn't offer a parley. He kicked the door of 4B off its hinges. The scene inside was chaos. The apartment was trashed. Oleg Petrov was holding a knife to Clara's throat. Another Russian was holding the boy, Leo, by the arm, covering his mouth. Clara was bleeding from a cut on her lip. Her eyes went wide when she saw Dom. But it wasn't relief he saw there. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. "Let them go," Dom said, his voice dropping to that lethal whisper. He leveled his gun at Oleg's forehead. "Back off, Calvetti," Oleg shouted, pressing the knife harder against Clara's skin. A thin line of blood appeared. "You drop the gun, or I open her up." "You're a dead man walking, Oleg," Dom said. "The only question is whether you die fast or slow." "I said drop it," Oleg shrieked. He was panicking. He hadn't expected Dom to breach so quickly. Dom's eyes flicked to Clara. He needed her to trust him, just for 1 second. "Sophia," he said. The name hung in the air like smoke. Oleg froze. "What did you call her?" Clara's body went rigid. "Don't call me that," she spat. "You killed them. You killed Mum and Dad." The accusation hit Dom like a physical blow. "She thinks I did it?" The distraction was enough. The Russian holding the boy shifted his grip. Leo, terrified but scrappy, bit down hard on the man's hand. The Russian yelled and let go. "Get down!" Dom roared. Leo dropped to the floor. Dom fired. Pop, pop. 2 shots. Clean. Precise. The first bullet took the Russian holding the boy in the throat. He dropped without a sound. The second bullet hit Oleg in the right shoulder, the arm holding the knife. Dom was too good a marksman to miss, and too cruel to kill him instantly. He wanted answers. Oleg screamed and dropped the knife. Clara didn't wait. She stomped on Oleg's instep with her heel, drove an elbow into his gut, and scrambled away, scooping Leo up into her arms. Sal and the other enforcers rushed in, securing the room. Sal kicked Oleg in the face, knocking him flat, and zip-tied his hands before he could blink. The room fell silent, save for Oleg's groans and Leo's sobbing. Dom holstered his gun. He stood in the center of the wreckage, looking at the woman huddled in the corner, clutching the child like a shield. "Sophia," Dom said again, taking a step forward. "I didn't kill them. I swear on my life, I didn't." "Stay back!" Clara screamed, pulling a small kitchen knife from her pocket. She must have grabbed it during the scuffle. She pointed it at him, her hand shaking. "I saw you. I saw you by the car. You watched the house burn." Dom stopped. He held up his hands, palms open. "I wasn't watching it burn, Sophia. I was trying to get in. The doors were barred. I was burned trying to break the window. Look." He undid the cuff of his shirt and rolled up his left sleeve. From his wrist to his elbow, the skin was a twisted map of burn scars, thick keloid tissue that he usually kept hidden under expensive Italian wool. Clara stared at the arm. The knife in her hand lowered slightly. "I tried," Dom choked out, his voice cracking for the first time in years. "I tried to get you out. The roof collapsed. I thought you were dead. I spent 10 years wishing I had died in that fire with you." Clara looked at the scars, then up at his eyes. The monster she had built in her mind began to crack. The man standing before her wasn't the cold-blooded killer she remembered. He was a man in pain. "Dom?" she whispered. "It's me, Sophie," he said, using the childhood nickname only he used. Clara dropped the knife. She didn't run to him. She just slumped against the wall, the adrenaline leaving her body, leaving her empty and shaking. "We have to go," Sal interrupted, his voice tight. "Boss, the shots. Cops will be here in 3 minutes, and the Petrovs will have backup nearby." Dom nodded, snapping back into general mode. "Grab the Russian," he pointed at Oleg. "He's coming with us. I want to know who really set that fire 10 years ago, because if Sophia thinks it was me, someone planted that idea, and someone barred those doors." He turned to Clara. He didn't touch her. He just extended a hand. "You don't have to trust me," Dom said, "but you can't stay here. Please, let me get you safe." Clara looked at Leo, who was wheezing, his asthma triggered by the stress. She looked at the dead body on her floor. She looked at Dom's hand. She took it. The convoy sped out of Queens, crossing the bridge into Manhattan, then heading north toward Westchester. They didn't go to Dom's penthouse. They went to the Fortress, a sprawling estate in Scarsdale that served as the Calvetti family's stronghold during times of war. And make no mistake, this was war. Dom sat opposite Clara in the back of the SUV. Leo was asleep across her lap, exhausted. "He needs medicine," Clara said, staring out the window. "Albuterol and corticosteroids." "It's already waiting at the house," Dom said. Sal called ahead to the private doctor. Clara nodded stiffly. "Thank you." "Why did you run?" Dom asked softly. "That night. Why didn't you go to the police?" "The police?" Clara let out a bitter laugh. "The police were on Dad's payroll, and then they were on yours, or whoever took over. I heard men talking outside the basement window before the fire started. They said Dominic gave the order. They said it was a coup." Dom's face darkened. "Who said that?" "I don't know." Voices in the dark. "Someone set me up," Dom murmured, the gears in his head turning furiously. "Someone wanted the family dead and wanted me to take the fall for it, or at least wanted you to think I did, so you wouldn't contest the succession." He looked at her intensely. "Sophia, you need to understand. When Father died, the commission was unstable. There were wolves at the door. I had to become a monster to hold the territory. But I would never hurt family." The SUV slowed as they approached the massive iron gates of the estate. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter with AR-15s. They pulled into the driveway. Dom helped her out. "Take the boy to the medical wing," Dom ordered a maid who was waiting at the entrance. "Stay with him," he told Clara. "I have business to attend to in the basement." Clara knew what business meant. They had dragged Oleg Petrov out of the second car, a black bag over his head. "Dom," Clara said, grabbing his arm. He froze at her touch. "Ask him," she said, her voice trembling but hard. "Ask him about the man with the limp, the one who started the fire. I remember. One of the men outside the window walked with a limp, a dragging sound." Dom's eyes widened. "A limp? Yes, metal on pavement, like a brace." A look of terrible realization crossed Dom's face. "Get some rest, Sophia," he said, pulling away. "I'll handle this." Dom walked down the stone steps to the soundproofed basement. Sal was already there, rolling up his sleeves. Oleg was tied to a chair, bleeding but conscious. "Wake him up," Dom said. Sal threw a bucket of ice water on the Russian. Oleg sputtered, coughing. "You made a mistake, Calvetti," Oleg rasped. "My brother will burn this city." "Your brother is a moron," Dom said calmly, pulling a chair over and sitting backward on it, facing Oleg. "And you are going to tell me everything." But first, Dom leaned in close. Who is the man with the leg brace? Oleg's eyes flickered, just for a microsecond. But Dom saw it. It was fear. Not of Dom, but of someone else. I don't know what you're talking about, Oleg lied. Dom stood up and nodded to Sal. Sal walked over to a workbench and picked up a pair of heavy pliers. We have all night, Oleg, Dom said, lighting a cigar. Let's start with the fingers on your left hand, the ones you used to touch my sister. For the next hour, the basement was filled with sounds that would haunt a lesser man. But Dom felt nothing. He was hunting a ghost. An hour later, broken and weeping, Oleg finally broke. It wasn't us, Oleg sobbed. We didn't set the fire 10 years ago. We were just hired muscle for the cleanup. Who hired you? Dom roared, grabbing Oleg by the lapels. The consigliere, Oleg screamed. It was your father's consigliere, Marcus Vance. Dom released him, stumbling back. Marcus Vance, the man who had raised him after his parents died, the man who had taught him how to run the business, the man who sat at his dinner table every Sunday. Marcus had a bad hip. He had worn a leg brace for 15 years. He wanted the territory, Oleg gasped. He wanted the Calvetti Empire to crumble so he could sell it off to the Triads, piece by piece. But you survived. You were too strong. So he stayed close. He waited. Dom felt like the floor was opening up beneath him. The betrayal was absolute. The man he called Uncle Marcus had killed his parents. He had tried to kill Sophia, and he had framed Dom for it in Sophia's eyes. Dom pulled his gun. Boss? Sal asked. Finish him, Dom said, walking toward the stairs. Clean this up. We're going to war. Where are you going? I'm going to make a phone call, Dom said, his voice void of all emotion. I'm inviting Marcus to dinner. Nah. Dom walked up the stairs, the weight of the truth heavy on his shoulders. He needed to tell Sophia. He needed to tell her that the monster wasn't him. But as he reached the main hallway, he saw the maid running toward him, face pale. Mr. Calvetti, sir. What is it? It's the boy and the lady. They're gone. Dom stopped. What do you mean, gone? The window in the medical wing is open. They climbed out and... Sir, one of the guards' cars is missing. Dom ran to the window. He looked out into the rainy night. The tracks of a vehicle tore through the manicured lawn, heading not towards the gate, but towards the back woods, the old service road. She had run again. She doesn't trust me, Dom whispered. She still thinks it's me. But then his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. I know you didn't do it. I remembered the brace, too. I'm going to finish what was started 10 years ago. Don't follow me. Dom stared at the screen. She's going after Marcus. He turned to Sal, who had just come up from the basement. Load up, Dom commanded, his voice thunderous. Every man, every gun. We're going to the Vance estate. Is she there? She's walking into a trap, Dom said, chambering around. Marcus isn't just a consigliere. He's the devil, and he's been waiting for her to come back from the dead. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, slicking the winding roads of Westchester. Dom pushed the armored Escalade to 110 miles per hour, the engine roaring like a dying beast. His knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. She's going to get herself killed, Dom growled, swerving around a slow-moving truck. Marcus has a private army. She has a paring knife and a 6-year-old boy. Sal, sitting in the passenger seat, was checking the GPS. She's 10 minutes ahead of us, boss, but she turned off the transponder on the guard's car. We're flying blind. Dom's phone rang. It was Tony DeLuca again. Not now, Tony, Dom barked, unless you have satellite eyes on her. I don't need a satellite, Dom. I have the DNA results, Tony said, his voice unusually sharp. You need to pull over. I'm driving into a war zone, Tony. Tell me. She is not Sophia. Dom slammed on the brakes. The massive SUV fishtailed on the wet asphalt, screeching to a halt inches from the guardrail. Sal grabbed the dashboard, eyes wide. Say that again, Dom whispered, his heart hammering a rhythm he didn't recognize. The DNA is a mismatch, Tony explained rapidly. I ran it 3 times. Dom, Sophia died in that house 10 years ago. The dental records were right. This girl, she isn't a Calvetti, but she remembers, Dom said, his voice shaking. She remembers the fire. She remembers the leg brace. She has the scar. I dug deeper, Tony said. I looked at the staff logs from that night. There was a live-in nurse, Maria Thorne. She had a daughter the same age as Sophia. Her name was Clara Thorne. They were best friends. They did everything together. They even dressed alike. Dom felt the world tilting. The nurse's daughter. Trauma does strange things to the mind, Dom. If she saw her mother die, if she was burned, if she was wearing Sophia's clothes, she might have adopted the identity as a survival mechanism. Or maybe she just hates you because she thinks you set the fire that killed her mother. Dom stared out at the rain-lashed windshield. She wasn't his sister. The relief that washed over him was so intense it was dizzying. For the last 2 hours, he had been fighting a war between his duty to his family and the undeniable, magnetic pull he had felt the moment he saw her in the club. He had hated himself for noticing how beautiful she was. He had buried that attraction under layers of guilt. But now, she wasn't blood. She was just a woman who had survived hell. A woman who was currently driving into a trap to kill the man who actually destroyed their lives. She's not my sister, Dom said aloud, the realization shifting something fundamental in his soul. She's not my blood. But she's mine. He slammed his foot on the gas. The tires smoked, catching traction, and the SUV launched forward. Sal, Dom said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming darker, more dangerous. Call the boys. No prisoners tonight. Marcus Vance dies. But Clara, if a single hair on her head is touched, I will burn the entire state of New York. Understood, boss? Dom didn't just want to save her now. He wanted to claim her. The Vance estate was a fortress of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. It was cold, modern, and soulless, much like Marcus Vance himself. Clara parked the stolen security car in the woods a quarter-mile away. She left Leo in the car, hidden under a blanket in the back seat. Stay down, she whispered, handing him the phone. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, you press the green button. It calls the police. Don't go, Clara, Leo begged, tears streaming down his face. I have to, baby. The bad man. He's the reason we're always running. I have to make him stop. She kissed his forehead and stepped out into the rain. She didn't have a gun. She only had the small knife and a heart full of 10 years of nightmares. She slipped through the perimeter fence where the ground had washed away. She knew the layout of this house, too. She remembered coming here for Christmas parties when she was a child. She made it to the patio doors. Inside, she could see him, Marcus Vance. He was older now, his hair white, but he was still leaning on that cane, his leg braced in steel. He was sitting by the fire, drinking wine, looking at a painting on the wall, a painting of Dom's father. Clara smashed the glass with a heavy garden stone. The alarm shrieked instantly. Marcus didn't flinch. He just turned his head slowly as Clara stepped through the shattered glass, wet, shivering, and holding the knife with both hands. Hello, my dear, Marcus smiled. It was a grandfatherly smile, which made it all the more grotesque. I wondered when you would show up. Oleg told me you were spirited. You killed them, Clara screamed, stepping over the glass. You killed my parents. You blamed Dom. 4 security guards burst into the room, guns drawn. Hold fire, Marcus commanded. He sipped his wine. Let her speak. You were outside the window, Clara cried, images flashing in her mind. I heard the brace. Click, drag, click, drag. You locked the doors. Marcus chuckled. I did. It was a necessary purging. The Calvettis were weak. They had morals. Morals are bad for business. I'm a Calvetti, Clara yelled. And I'm going to kill you. Marcus's smile vanished. He looked her up and down with cold, clinical eyes. "Oh, you poor broken thing," he sneered. "Is that what you think? You think you're Sophia?" Clara froze. "What?" Marcus stood up, limping toward her. Sophia Calvete died in the guest bedroom. She was asphyxiated by the smoke before the fire even reached her. I saw the body myself. "No." Clara shook her head. "I'm Sophia. I have the scar." "You have a scar because you tripped over the rug trying to run away," Marcus laughed cruelly. "You're Clara. You're the nurse's brat. The help." He stopped inches from her knife. "You aren't a princess, darling. You're a nobody. A ghost wearing a dead girl's name." Clara's world shattered. The memories. The confusion. Was he lying? Or was this the truth she had been hiding from herself? "It doesn't matter who I am," Clara whispered, gripping the knife tighter. "You're still a monster." She lunged. Marcus was faster than he looked. He swung his heavy cane, cracking it against Clara's wrist. She screamed, dropping the knife. Marcus backhanded her, sending her sprawling onto the Persian rug. He stood over her, pressing the tip of his cane into her throat, choking her. "And now," Marcus hissed, "you'll join the rest of the trash." Crash! The front doors of the mansion exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. An SUV rammed straight through the double oak doors, sending wood splinters flying like shrapnel. The Escalade screeched to a halt in the middle of the grand foyer. Marcus spun around, stumbling back. Dominic Calvete stepped out of the driver's seat. He was holding a Sig Sauer in each hand. He didn't say a word. He just started shooting. Bang, 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 bang. The 4 guards dropped before they could even raise their weapons. Headshots. Every single one. Marcus scrambled backward, trying to reach a hidden panel on the wall. "Don't," Dom said. The voice wasn't loud. It was the sound of a tomb closing. Dom walked through the smoke and debris, his eyes fixed on Marcus. He stepped over the bodies of the guards. He didn't look at Clara yet. He kept his eyes on the target. "Dominic," Marcus stammered, holding up his hands. "Listen to me. She's a fraud. She's not your sister. She's—" "I know," Dom said. He raised the gun. "Wait. We can share the territory. I have connections in China. I can make you a king." "I don't want to be a king," Dom said coldly. "I just want to be the man who killed you." He fired. One shot, right through the heart. Marcus Vance fell back into the fireplace, dead before he hit the ashes. The silence that followed was deafening. The alarms had been cut. The only sound was the rain blowing in through the shattered doors and Clara's ragged breathing. Dom holstered his weapons. He turned slowly to look at her. Clara was sitting on the floor, holding her bruised wrist. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears and shame. "He said," Clara choked out, "he said, I'm not Sophia. He said, I'm just Clara." Dom crossed the room. He didn't stop until he was towering over her. Then he dropped to his knees. He didn't check her injuries. He didn't check the room. He reached out and cupped her face in his large, rough hands. "I know who you are," Dom whispered fiercely. "I'm nobody," she sobbed. "I lied to you. I lied to myself." "You are not nobody," Dom said, his thumb brushing away a tear. "You are the woman who brought me back to life." Clara looked at him, confused. "But I'm not your family." "No," Dom said, his dark eyes searching hers, intense and burning with a heat that had nothing to do with family. "You're not my sister. Thank God for that." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "Because the way I want to love you. I couldn't do that if you were family." Clara's breath hitched. "Dom?" "You saved me tonight, Clara," he murmured against her lips. "I was a ghost for 10 years. You woke me up." He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fueled by adrenaline, fear, and a decade of loneliness. It was a promise, a claim. Clara froze for a second, then melted into him, her hands grabbing the lapels of his suit, pulling him closer. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a fugitive. She didn't feel like a fake. She felt safe. "Leo," she gasped, breaking the kiss. "He's in the woods." Dom stood up and pulled her to her feet, wrapping an arm around her waist as if he would never let her go again. "Let's go get our boy," Dom said. 6 months later. The Onyx Lounge was closed for a private event. The jazz was playing, soft, slow, and sweet. The tables were cleared. There was only one couple on the dance floor. Clara wore a dress of emerald green silk that hugged every curve, her back exposed, revealing the faint scars of her past that she no longer felt the need to hide. She looked radiant, healthy. The shadows under her eyes were gone, replaced by a light that lit up the room. Dom held her close, swaying to the music. He wasn't wearing a tie. He looked younger, the weight of the world lifted from his shoulders. "You're stepping on my feet," Clara laughed softly. "I'm a gangster, not Fred Astaire," Dom grumbled, though he was smiling. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. Over at the bar, Sal was showing a card trick to Leo. The boy was laughing, wearing a miniature version of Dom's suit. He had his own nebulizer now, a portable one, and the best doctors in the state. He called Dom Dad now. It had happened naturally, about 2 months in. "Are you happy?" Dom asked, twirling Clara. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "We own the city, Dom. People are still watching." "Let them watch," Dom said, pulling her flush against him. "They know what happened to the last man who looked at you the wrong way." He ran a hand down her hair. "We aren't running anymore, Clara. I liquidated the drug trade. We're moving into legitimate shipping and real estate. In 5 years, the Calvetti name will be clean. And until then, Dom kissed her nose, "I'm still the boss." Clara rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. She thought about the waitress who had dropped that tray of champagne. That terrified girl seemed like a stranger now. She wasn't Sophia Calvetti. She was Clara Thorne, and she was the Queen of New York. "One look," she whispered. That night, you stopped everything for one look." Dom stopped dancing. He lifted her chin so he could look into those mismatched eyes, one brown, one blue, that had haunted him and saved him. "It was the best decision of my life," he said. He kissed her again, deep and slow, as the music played on. Outside, the city moved, sirens wailed, and the world kept turning. But inside the Onyx Lounge, everything was perfect. The ghost of New York had finally found his heart. And that is the story of how a single dropped glass changed the fate of the entire underworld. From a terrified waitress to the queen of the mob, Clara didn't just survive. She conquered the heart of the most dangerous man in the city. I hope you enjoyed this original Mafia romance drama. If you did, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. I want to know, do you think Dom should have told her the truth about her identity sooner, or did he do the right thing by waiting? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.